Hey yo, what's up gang? So, in this video we're going to be building a larch tree, but it's not going to be one of those classic showcase videos where I show you guys what I built. I'm just going to be actively building one conifer tree because so many of y'all have asked about that. I've got comments asking how to use those new like needle branches and conifer branches and stuff, so we're just going to dabble with that today and see how it turns out. The tree species that we're going to be trying to build today is a larch tree, right? And I know where I live, you actually get these trees grown a lot, so it's like a species that's been on my list for quite some time as well, right? Fun fact about larch tree is, although it's a conifer, it's not actually an evergreen tree, and it's one of the few conifer that actually loses all of its needles in the winter. This makes them quite easy to identify when you go out in the woods when it's like not summer or spring, right? So right now at this time of year, I can just walk outside. If you kind of know what you're looking for and there's like dead conifer trees here and there, then there's a good chance that it's large trees. Anyways, let's get to it. We're gonna just start off with building the trunk. Make sure to have a stump at the bottom, that way the trees work with layers as well as on full blocks. And we just want the size of the stump to just taper off towards the top. That looks a bit too skinny at the top, so we're just gonna thicken that a little bit there. That and like that, and I'd say that's a pretty good shape for a larch tree. Maybe a little more uneven. Perfect. Okay, so this is about the size. You can of course make it a little bit diagonal or leaning in like a direction or something like that. I'm not going to do that just because that complicates things a bit. I'm just going to stay with the classic tree, the classic conifer tree shape that we all know and love. So that's what we're going to start off with. You won't really need thick branches too much. I'm gonna put like one or two down here at the bottom just for fun, but towards the top you really won't want to use any of these thick ones that much. Now I'm just gonna go ahead and grab these thinner ones. I'm not really gonna need the super steep ones. Now what you're gonna want to do is you're gonna want to have these branches become thicker. These branches be longer the further down they are. So down here at the bottom, these branches are going to be quite long. Well, this isn't that long, but like, you know what I mean. And I realize actually, I'm going to put this up one like that. Have it up one here, that way it isn't that long. There. And then the higher you go, the shorter the branches get. That way the shape of the tree tapers off into that classic cone shape. Later on, once we add all the needles, we can also check again to see if there are any gaps that we may have missed, and we can always go in and add like more branches. I'd say this is probably enough when it comes to branches. Now we're just gonna grab the branch tips. And I'm only really gonna use the ones hanging downwards just to get that shape. Whoops, we missed a spot there. Just to get the hanging shape, this is gonna be a larch tree. Whoopsie-doo. This is gonna be a larch tree. So larch branches generally droop downwards. There are a couple like conifer trees that have the branches pointing up. Then of course you can use the branch tips that point upwards, but for this tree I'm only going to use the droopy ones. I'd say for most deciduous trees, the branches is actually one of the most important parts, right? Because you don't want, the leaves is like one of the easier sections to do, but the branches really make out the shape of the tree. But for conifers, it's actually the other way around. The leaves play a much, or like the needles play a much bigger role in the overall shape of the tree than the branches actually do. So whether you get these right or not isn't actually that big of a deal. And now here at the top, I'm actually going to place a branch like that, and I'm going to replace this top block with a stump. And get a debug stick and debug that. That way we can have, yeah, see, that way we can have a branch tip inside of the trunk for that extra little taper towards the top, you know? And before we go on, I'm actually gonna texture this, we won't really need the mosses. I'm just going to use the normal mossy block. The reason I do this right now and not at the end is because it'll become harder to reach the trunk towards the end, so it just makes life easier if you do this right at the beginning. Okay, now I can grab my needle blocks. As I said, this is going to be a larch tree, so we're going to use the lightly. As I said, this is going to be a larch tree, so we're actually going to be using the light larch needles. These work quite well, and later for texturing, we're going to use the dead ones and then the yellow larch leaves. There. We just put the branch tip at the top. I'd say the tip of the tree is probably one of the most important parts to get right. There isn't really a science when it comes to placing the needles, you know. Just, you know, place them in places where you think they might look good, see if they work or not. If they don't, you can always go in and change them, right? Like that. I don't like that, actually, so we're going to remove that. Maybe place one like there and place one like that. Yeah, we're gonna have like a longer little branch right there. And I'm actually gonna make this one here. I'm gonna make it the other way around. We don't have that big of a variety when it comes to these branches. We only have the long branch tip and the short one, right? But what we can do to get like variety is we can put the long branch the other way around. That works really well for slightly longer branches because it protrudes out a little bit further or it protrudes upwards a little bit further than the other way around does, right? And I just think it looks pretty cool. See, like that, for example, there's like a gap there, which I don't really like, so we're gonna add something like that. See, that already fills in that gap, and then that problem is fixed. Here I'm gonna put a reverse diagonal one, so it sticks out a little bit further than the one above it. See, so this is already shaping up pretty nicely, I think. I'm going to put a slab down right there just to give it a little bit more volume on these thicker branches coming towards the bottom. Something that's important coming towards the bottom is that you don't make it too dense. I remember the first couple like conifer trees that I made were really dense at the bottom, right? And it didn't really look that good. I noticed it afterwards, so sadly I had to delete all of those because they were not up to par with the standards that I set for myself for this tree repository. Like, of course, you don't want to have it too like open, but it's not just spamming. It's not just spamming these leaf blocks or these needle blocks, right? It's kind of, I don't know. You just have to look. You have to place somewhere you feel like there are still gaps where it's too much. Like, for example, I noticed when I look in this section right here, I noticed there's definitely space for another diagonal branch to come out here. I'm gonna add that at the end, right? And then you can add some leaves. But when I look at a section like this, for example, feels really good, right? It's not too full, right? You can still see the trunk, you can still see the branches, which is a good thing, but it's also not so empty that it feels barren almost, right? That's kind of what we're striving for when it comes to this whole thing. Alright, so we got all the branches, right? We got all the branches that we placed at the beginning filled in. The shape isn't 100% yet where I want it to be. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to grab this, and we're going to go look around, and we're going to see, okay, look, like here, this is that place that we talked about earlier. I feel like this could fit a nice diagonal branch right there, so we're going to place in a diagonal branch. And just put some of the needles on there, make sure it's not too full, but, you know, make sure that it looks good still. Like that. I think that's very nice. I kind of want this part right up here to protrude out a little bit further, and I think I can do that with one diagonal branch like that. Well, that might be actually a little bit too far. So one like that maybe. Yeah, that actually helped a bit. And up here we're gonna do the same thing. We're just gonna have a diagonal one facing outwards actually. Yeah, I like that already a lot more. That way it has a little bit more of an irregular shape and it doesn't go pretty straight at the top. We like that, we like that. Here there's another gap that I don't really like. We can just put a straight branch here first. Like that, and maybe honestly we could also probably put like a diagonal branch here as well. Like so. Yeah, because that would already fill up this whole gap. Like I said, we don't want it to be too empty, right? We still want there to be good volume in the needles. But we also don't want it to be so full that you can't really see any of the branch work. Just make it look realistic, bruh. It's not that hard. Alright, there. See, I like that a lot. Now, this is starting to look really, really nice, I think. You're looking at it from the side, I feel like there could be a little bit more sticking out right up there. So we're just gonna, one of these, like that. Now that's looking real nice, I think. And now at the bottom, we're just gonna add a couple more little needles here. These are gonna return dead in a second when we texture it. Just to make this not feel so so barren. Yeah, I think this tree, shape-wise, this tree turned out very, very well. I think the gaps look, the places that do still have gaps, like right up here and here, I think these look quite natural. And I like the way this looks. Larch trees often have like a bushy type of feel, and I think we replicated this in this tree quite well. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to actually just take the paintbrush to texture some. I'm going to take dead ones, and we're going to take these yellow larch leaves. You don't need the paintbrush, of course. You can just do this by hand as well. This paintbrush makes it easier. And we're just going to replace some of the bottom branches here with dead branches, like that. And then we're going to take the yellow larch leaves and replace some of these around the dead branches, just to show where branches are slowly dying. It's such a subtle color difference that you don't really even notice it, but I think it does make a difference, and I think it adds a lot. But you see, like, from afar, you can barely notice it. It's just like that little bit of transition from the bottom to the top, you know? And the last thing we're actually going to do on this tree is we're going to grab these Norway dead, what are these, dead branches, like these twigs, right? And we're going to work our way around the top. We don't do the very bottom block. We start at the second one. The reason for this is because we want these trees to work with layers, and if we do the very bottom block, it'll remove any like leaves that we have or any plants that we have growing around these trees, and we don't really want that. We don't want to spam these, but you know, have a couple of them here and there definitely is good. Towards the top, you don't really even notice anymore, just because there's leaves everywhere. Depending on what species of conifer you're doing, you can of course always still put pine cones or spruce cones into your tree. These are larch trees. They do have cones as well, but the cones are tiny and you wouldn't really see them. If I would use them, I'd probably use this, but even here I don't really think that the green matches the leaves that well, so I'm probably going to leave cones out for this one. If I was doing pine trees or spruce trees, I'd definitely still use spruce cones or pine cones on the tree, right? When I would be using these, you want to make sure that you put it in places where they're actually connected to the branches above. Like for example, this would totally work, but you wouldn't want to have it like here where it's like floating, right? We don't like that a lot. Like that, see, that's also connected. This would totally work, but not floating. And besides that, honestly, this is it. This is this is how I build my conifer trees. I think these look really good. I think this one turned out brilliantly, and I hope y'all enjoyed this video. I know it was a bit of it was again one of those tutorial type, more of this one of the, fuck. Yeah, I hope this helped, you know, those of you who want to build their own trees, and I'll see you guys again in the next video. Peace.